everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Nutrition, where nutrition is all about you. So today we're going to be talking about carbohydrates. Most of you probably think of like a loaf of bread or pasta when you think about carbohydrates, but today we're really going to dissect what they are and what they do for us, and some good healthy sources of carbohydrates that we can incorporate into our diets. So let's start out with what the word means. Carbohydrate literally means carbs and water. It's like a compound word there. So, what a carbohydrate is, it's a sugar compound created from plants during photosynthesis. So it's actually a whole bunch of different units of sugar linked together in a chemical-like way. So there's three different types of carbohydrates. There's simple carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, and dietary fibers. So simple carbohydrates are carbohydrates that have only 1 or 2 units of sugar linked together. If there's only 1 unit of sugar, we call that a monosaccharide. And if there's 2, it's called a disaccharide. An example of a disaccharide is something like table sugar. So really sweet things, or not necessarily just sweet things, but things like cake and things like that are more likely to be simple carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are carbohydrates that have more than 2 units of sugar linked together. And we call those polysaccharides because, as you know, poly means many, and there's many units of the sugar. These type of carbohydrates take longer to digest because your body has to process all of those units of sugar, and as a result of this, glucose is released more slowly and evenly into the bloodstream. The third type of carbohydrate is dietary fibers, and dietary fibers are a little bit different because the bonds holding these sugar units together aren't digestible by your stomach acids, so they're not really necessarily an energy source, but you can still eat them. Something else that happens when you eat carbohydrates is that insulin is released in your body. And insulin is just like a chemical in your body that helps break down sugars and starches. And when you eat simple carbohydrates, your body requires more insulin to break them down. And so as a result of this, if you are diabetic, or if you know any diabetics, you might already know that they can't eat a lot of sugars, and so simple carbohydrates are not something that they can process well because they lack the insulin necessary to process these foods. Similarly to proteins and carbs, which you might know about if you watched my 2 other videos, carbohydrates supply energy in the form of calories. They have about 4 calories per gram. But if you eat more carbs than your body needs, as in you're not using that energy, it will eventually turn into fat. So you have to be careful with your carbs, just like you have to do with all the other foods that you intake. So a few things that carbs do for us is they regulate sugar circulation in the blood so that nutrients are getting to where they need to be. They also supply nutrients for good bacteria in our stomachs that help digest things, as well as they aid our bodies in absorbing calcium. So carbs are they're not bad. And a few good sources of carbs that you can find in foods, you can find them in fruits, vegetables, good complex carbs like rice and whole wheat bread, and a variety of other things that you can find at your supermarket. And I will write more in the post that's going to be accompanying this video. Thank you.